let me put you in a bit of a box, okay? Not knowing you, but this is the box I'm going to put you in. And you've helped to paint it a little bit a few moments ago. You used the word activist. You come from a long line of activists. So that's one color I'm painting your box with. The other color I'm painting your box with is that you serve in the city setting. So you have very little time to do anything else other than get the job done, okay? So I can imagine you're very practically minded, and that's one thing that city leaders are revered for,
Very
is
much,
getting stuff done. But having said that, let's just go to theory just for a moment, as much as it might offend you. When you reflect on the practice of leadership, what has informed that? What has informed your leadership practice and the act of doing leadership?
So I think, yes, I do sometimes try and pause to reflect on this, because, as I say, the whole thing of becoming a leader happened all quite quickly for me. I think being a woman actually has been quite a significant part of it, and thinking about being a woman in leadership, still relatively rare in local government and in cities in Scotland. And in actual fact, we have the Scottish Cities Alliance of Scotland, 7 cities, and there's just been an 8th one just appointed as for the Queen's Platinum Jubilee. And there were a couple of other women leaders before the election, but I'm now the only women leader of a city in Scotland. I think I've always felt a certain responsibility to reflect my personal politics and personal values in the way that I present myself publicly, in the way that I lead. I said that I was a campaigner within my own party for better representation of women in elected office. And so when I became a woman in elected office, and particularly a leader, I think, right, okay, I had to think about, what does that mean then? How do I now use this position that I've got? How do I, how do I define myself as a leader? I think I found that very challenging, and I think a lot of women find it very challenging, and particularly because it is unusual. I didn't have a lot of role models, if you like, in terms of city leadership. That's not just in Scotland, that's in the UK as well. I've been very lucky since I've been in this job to meet amazing women city leaders. Anne Hidalgo in Paris, for example, Mayor Yvonne Aki-Sawyer, the mayor of Freetown, incredible women. So as time has gone on, I have been able to get role models, but I had to become a leader before I could get them, if you see what I mean. They weren't there for me to begin with. Yeah. So I think that part has been very important for me. I think trying to find the right balance between collaboration and delegation, which I do a lot of, and I think my colleagues in the sort of the city government that I lead would say that I am, I put a lot of trust in them, in their skills to deliver, their abilities, and they're a superb team, but then recognizing that when you've got the title of leader, when the chips are down and when it's tough, somebody has to make a decision, and you can't shirk that responsibility and pass it off on to others. Ultimately, you have to have that that kind of courage, I suppose, and that can be challenging sometimes, when you have to reach within yourself, but recognize that courage is a big part of it. So I think and looking outwards as well, I think always trying to not talk to my own interests or concerns, but constantly be trying to address the concerns of the citizens that I serve, and thinking about how I frame the conversations that I have with them to make them meaningful, to be outward looking. I don't mean self-serving in the sense of and in the sense of helping yourself, but more, it can be very easy sometimes to get caught up in your own particular interests, I suppose, particularly when you are a political animal. There's certain things that you want to achieve, certain kind of outcomes that you want to see. But sometimes you have to, if not set them aside, because I do think you try and remain your authentic self as a leader as much as possible, but recognize that you're not leading for yourself and your own interests, your own hobbies, if you like. You're leading on behalf of others, and you have to try and have as broad a view as possible in that respect, but also be willing to say no, be willing to say to people, for example, Glasgow is a home to a lot of refugees and asylum seekers. We're in fact the biggest asylum dispersal city in the UK, and not everyone likes that. There are some people who don't like that. Now, that's not an interest that I'm there to serve. I'm not going to at any point say, oh well, we'll not accept any more refugees then, because I believe that it's one of my core values, and actually I think it's a core value of the city. But what I do have to do, I can't say, well, I'm not engaging with those people because I disagree with them. What I have to do is say, okay, why do those people feel like that? Is it fear? Is it concern that they will lose something? How do we address that? How do we try to make, and it's not a case of trying to win them over necessarily, but recognizing that these people are still going to have needs that have to be served. And I am still, they almost certainly didn't vote for me, but nonetheless, I'm elected to lead for them and on their behalf, as much as the people who might share my personal and political values. I think an example I would pick on just now is traffic and cars. And we have Glasgow's a very historically very car-dominated city, which is particularly problematic because we actually have very low car ownership in the city. It's often people from outside, but the way our city centre in particular is designed has made it very car-dominated for almost a century. And we have policies to change that and to massively something else to design that out of the way the city functions. And a lot of people are very, very unhappy about that. They're very threatened by that. And I can't just say tough. We need to recognise and try to address those worries, those concerns, that anger, because it does cause anger, without compromising on the policies that we know we need to enact, and because the outcomes that we'll achieve are essential to the future well-being of the city. So there's so many balancing acts, and I think recognizing all of those, but as I say, trying to remain your authentic self within that, because I think people understand they're not going to agree with you on everything, but I think especially Glaswegians, people in Glasgow don't, they can spot what we would say a chancer a mile off, and
the rest of the world, you don't have to explain that to me, Susan. The rest of the world gets it. That
I think they find much more offensive than you simply not agreeing with them, or so. Yeah, sorry, that I'm not sure that was a very clear or articulate answer. I think I'm probably thinking it through. I'm thinking aloud rather than actually giving you a clear answer. But yeah.
No, well, my takeaways are this. There was a moment in which you needed to reflect on what it meant to not only be a leader, but a leader as a woman, in light of the fact that there weren't many role models around, but indeed there's no lack of role models, which you found and mentioned, one of whom the wonderful mayor of Freetown I'll be speaking to in a few weeks' time. So that was the first point. The second is showing courage, and showing courage, especially when the world doesn't really seem to be on your side, but you're doing the right thing, which speaks to integrity. The third thing you mentioned is, well, I'm thinking about, you didn't use this language in particular, but your constituents, others, the greater community, which is benevolence. And finally, you've mentioned now authenticity as well. So thank you for thinking out loud is what I'm trying to say.